Welcome to Screen Quest, a podcast where a fellowship of film lovers and armchair movie experts plays film roulette. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Waterman, joined by May Finch
Hello, hello.
and Will Rotondi.
Hey, how's it going?
Not too bad. On today's episode, it is the first of our two-parter for Versus Mode, Ex Machina versus Gone Girl. We will be talking about Ex Machina today. And then in next week's episode, we will be comparing, contrasting, and declaring a winner. We'll also be drawing a side quest like always. But first, we are going to define what Deus Ex Machina means and maybe talk about one of our favorite examples, I'd imagine, a piece. Yeah. So, May, take it away. How would you define Deus Ex Machina?
So, as you might have guessed, it's a Latin phrase. It means God from the machinery. Actually, it might be ancient Greek. Anyway, it's one of those old languages. And it describes a plot device that takes a seemingly unresolvable situation and suddenly fixes it via some far-fetched or impossible intervention. It's been around since ancient Greek theater. The playwright Euripides was the one that popularized it, because in his plays, usually the Deus Ex Machina was literally an actor playing a god of some sort being lowered to the stage with a crane-like machine to suddenly fix things. So, God in the Machine. I wanted to talk about it since obviously that's kind of where the movie title today came from, and ask, do you guys have a use of this that you've either really loved or really hated? One that you feel strongly about one way or another.
I could go with both, but I'm gonna let Chris do one first, and then if he chooses one of those, then I'll just go with the other one.
I don't know if you would I would consider this an example of one that I like. But I think the final, I don't know, 10 minutes or so of Jurassic Park, the T-Rex that comes into the building and just like there's no indication of how it got there or why, but it doesn't matter because everyone looks like they're about to become raptor food, and you cheer, for the T-Rex who's been terrifying the poor park goers for most of the movie, suddenly kind of becomes like the hero. So that's probably my favorite example of like a positive one.
Was actually one of the ones I was thinking of. So yeah,
We're
it
the
was
same
like
exact age.
because it's I was gonna say same age, generally same taste. So I'm not surprised at all. It's a great example, and I like 100% behind you, Chris. Like I love that use of it because I agree. I mean, the movie in itself is great. I love the first Jurassic Park film. But I also think that it doesn't really matter why. It just works, and you're like, sure, why not? We'll go with it. I guess the only other like the other major like pop culture from that time, well, maybe not that time period, but like growing up, remembering it sort of weirdly with the first time I saw it, and then just kind of not really carry too much was like when the Eagles show up in Return of the King, and everybody just sort of was like, why didn't we just ride one of those to, Mount Doom to begin with? Why are they suddenly now like helping out? I'm sure there's probably something in the books. I'm gonna just go ahead and admit I've never read the actual books to Lord of the Rings, so feel free to say what you will about me on that and my lack of reading as an English major. But I didn't care either watching Lord of the Rings. I was like, this movie is amazing. All three of them are amazing, and I can just suspend disbelief. And sure, we'll just go with that. Why not? It's fine.
That is a great example, and the one I was going to use. So
Nice.
I guess I will just say generally, I feel like I see this the most in kids' movies because you can get away with it more. Like the kid kind of expects like intervention from an adult, so it makes sense if there is like intervention at the end of a kid's film. I'm thinking like I guess like Lion King with the hyenas and things like that. But yeah, I for me, it's not a trope I love because it does kind of make me feel robbed of a more complicated ending. But
Especially if like the film leading up to it feels so grounded in a lot of ways, and then they just sort of like shoehorn in something to make it all okay that you're like, come on, like what? Like I feel like it's sort of like not really sticking the landing on certain films where there's like a big build up and then the payoff doesn't feel like what you wanted. Is that kind of like the same feeling too when it's sort of like, and we're just gonna fix it?
We'll fix it in post.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
Spoiler for like the end of the Matrix. I won't say what happens when the Matrix Revolutions, but
Oh man.
quite literally,
Ah.
there is something that like almost is exactly what that is. Like it involves both like a god-like thing and machines, and it's like, how are they going to get out of this? And like the answer pretty much is just God. You know,
Yeah.
I just that's why I hate the third Matrix movie, because
Oh
you've
man.
built this interesting world with all kinds of possible solutions, and the most elegant one is just somebody can wave their hands, and yeah.
Yep. And so have you finally watched Resurrections yet, Chris? Or is that
No,
still
no, no, not yet. I gotta have enough like
alcohol?
I was gonna say like some kind of substance abuse. I feel like cannabis might be the better choice for that, honestly, but
You gotta free your mind, man. Yeah, I understand. Yep.
yeah.
Understood.
Yeah, you gotta take a little red pill and a little blue pill in order to watch it that
All the
way.
pills will help you with that.
I'm not trying to land in the ER. Like I'm not wealthy
No.
enough for that.
Solid.
But yeah, that's my little discussion of Deus Ex Machina. If you wanna launch us into our side quest, Chris.
Sure thing. Let's see what the tabletop simulator god has for us in terms of the cards. I haven't had this one in a few weeks at least. Throw your popcorn. This is one that's comes up a lot. I'm thinking when I revise the deck next time, I will do fewer of each of the side quest cards, but I don't mind having some repeats because I feel like some of them lend themselves well to like multiple options. So
I don't know. The fact that this is coming up again makes me want to throw my popcorn.
we can skip
Hey.
it. We can skip it. We'll leave it drawn and then just are we unanimous vote and I'll draw another one.
We veto. Is that an option? We can vote.
You can veto God. All right, doing it. All right. The next
Amazing.
one is Written in the Stars. I'm not going to go because I did this one last time. So that is choose a film from the year of your birth and that you love. Discuss why you love it.
Oh geez. Now I have to think about what came out in 1986. That wasn't
You guys can
Aliens.
Google if you want. It's all good. I can cut all around it.
I do have an option I'll throw out there. I know I talk about Star Trek a lot, and I'm going to talk about Star Trek again.
Yay.
For anyone who doesn't care, I'm sorry. It's just going to happen. I'll segue in a little bit of current day stuff too, but for 1986, when I was born, Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home came out, which is one of two films that has made me care a lot about whales. So the other one being Avatar 2, oddly enough, most recently, which I also enjoyed quite a bit. But I think that Star Trek was one of those things where it was like people joke about how those films are either hit or miss. It's like every other film is supposed to be good. And then the
Even
other
Star
ones
Treks are the good ones. 2, 4, and
yeah.
6.
Yeah. So it's sort of like this was just one of those that seemed to embrace what it was, which was trying to be more on the lighthearted side while also dealing with some sort of, time travel and touching on some serious subjects. Like I've never seen more like in your face whale carnage than I had up until that point as a child, which was very, I mean, it's still something that I can remember very like distinctly watching that film and being like, I think even closing my eyes like the first couple of times that I watched it when I was younger.
So
Um,
pause for our audience members because this is the first Star Trek film I ever saw as a kid, and what
really? Okay.
introduced me to all those characters, right?
Oh man. All right.
So for our audience who maybe has not seen it, can you give us a brief plot summary? Because I think this is like an exceptional like sci-fi film, not just a Star Trek film. But what's
I
the
would
plot summary?
I would agree too. It's one of those where you don't need to have seen previous like the storyline up to that point. Although it would help with some plot points, it's not really necessary. So without ruining the first three that came before it, I there is a space probe that's like trying to think about the best way to say this without rambling on too much. There's a probe from outer space that comes to Earth. Everything that it comes into contact with electronically gets messed up, doesn't work. Starships aren't able to use any of their systems except maybe for life support, because I don't think a bunch of people died from it. It was just they couldn't do anything. They couldn't figure out how to communicate with it. And they come to learn that the transmissions that are being sent from the probe sound like whale song. And the crew of the Enterprise, like the original crew of the Enterprise, so Kirk, Spock, McCoy, um, have all been on another planet. They're on Vulcan, I think, at the beginning of the film, and they are trying to come back to Earth in a Klingon battle cruiser or a Klingon bird of prey that they had stolen from a previous film. And in order to deal with the probe, they have decided that they're going to slingshot the ship around the sun, go back in time, and basically abscond with a couple of whales from the past. Because of course, why not? It's Star Trek. Time travel is apparently like their shtick. The more and more that Star Trek comes out these days only reinforces that.
Important plot point is that whales are extinct, right? So there's an environmental message to this. The reason they can't communicate with the probe is because like the whales have been hunted to extinction on Earth. Continue.
Yes.
You're doing great.
You're good. No. And and so it's like on the one hand, it is very much an environmental film dealing with the mass, extinction of just the whaling industry in general. And then just infused with a lot of very interesting humor watching the crew of the Enterprise try and interact with people in San Francisco in the 90s. Or I guess, I'm sorry, 86. So in the 80s, I apologize. So that was, I think, one of the more endearing aspects of it is listening to them try and talk to other people, and like especially like when they're getting like there's cursing involved that they don't seem to understand, which seems very strange in like the broader aspect of Star Trek later, but like scenes like that, trying to understand what people are saying to each other, trying to figure out
Kirk going, well, a double dumbass on you. Like,
I know.
It's kind of like, you would know how to say that, surely, but it's just funny. It does make fun.
Exactly. Colorful metaphors, as Spock would say. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. It had a little bit of suspense, but it was more just kind of lighthearted in terms of Star Trek films. And that was all it needed to be. It didn't need to be like it was sort of end of the world-esque, I guess, in some aspects because of whatever this probe was trying to do. But ultimately, it turns out that it's not like this big evil entity. It's very much like the antagonist is in most science fiction, like epics or films like Star Trek tends to do now. That it turned out that in the end, everybody got along and had a resolution, and it was fun. It was lighthearted and fun, and apparently one of the better Star Treks, as it turns out. At least as history remembers it. So, but yeah. Any other thoughts, Chris? Since you were kind enough to fill in some important points that I may have glossed over from your experience watching that film.
Not much to add. Like, I think what makes it work is it felt like an extended episode of of the original series, where it's like very much like it abandons the plot that was sort of like an arc from Wrath of Khan and Search for Spock, where it was like getting very political and like kind of war driven and like all this stuff. And then it's like, let's send the crew of the Enterprise on an adventure to solve a problem, and like try to deal with like something in a creative way. So I think that's what makes it work, because it really does feel like some of those episodes of the show that were like the best, where they're a little bit of fish out of water. Like, think of like The City on the Edge of Forever or whatever that episode is, where they go back in time. But no, I think it's exceptional Star Trek film, and I think the first that was directed by Leonard Nimoy, right? Like, isn't he the director?
So, yeah. Yep. He was on that one. I think that was
cool.
The first one. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Maybe he did Search for Spock as well, come to think of it. But in any event, like the director duties started getting passed around to the principals, and Shatner, let's just say, like,
Star
didn't
Trek
do
Five, baby. Yeah.
as good of a job in the subsequent outings.
You know
I love
what?
that
I
pick,
will
man.
say this. That actually, Star Trek Five, as much as people rag on it, I think ultimately had some good points to it. But yeah, it was very different. I would agree. But yeah, May, what about you? What about your thoughts on
Yeah,
Star Trek
so
4?
unfortunately I have not seen the whole thing. I saw bits and pieces of it on TV when I was a kid. I'm sorry, I had like kid things to do, so I didn't see the whole thing, all
There's
right?
only so much time for Stargate and Star Trek. I apologize. It's understandable. You got to get your priorities.
But I do remember very like vividly the outfits they had when they like first got to San Francisco.
Yeah, Spock's like his little like yeah headband that he did. Yeah,
To cover up the Vulcaneers, right? They're like, oh, they
yeah.
won't
Yeah.
understand.
And I just thought it was so funny to see them wearing those clothes. That was just what delighted me the most as a child.
Well, hey, you know what? Maybe we'll have to throw that on the board at some point and do that. But
If it's
yep,
not already there.
who knows? Can't say for sure.
Well, hey, thanks for sharing, man. I forgot that was a 86 movie. I approve of the choice.
Thanks.
I think that brings us to our main quest. So I'm going to go ahead and transition views really quickly. And we will talk about some Ex Machina.
All right. So this is part one of our two-parter, right? We're gonna watch Gone Girl next time. So I paired these two together because I see them both as kind of like violent, good for her movies. And that's kind of like the grounds I want to be comparing them on, just to kind of get you guys ready. But Ex Machina came out in 2015, or 2014, actually. Directed by Alex Garland and starring Alicia Vikander, Domhnall Gleeson, and Oscar Isaac. And it was really weird seeing Oscar Isaac as a not good dude after seeing him in all the Star Wars movies. I was like, I don't know, I don't buy this. But
Yeah,
yeah,
very tech bro-ish.
yeah, very tech bro-ish. Essentially, this is a movie that is split up into 7 days on this remote compound where Oscar Isaac's character, who is this kind of big tech CEO, he owns this big search engine company that's kind of a stand-in for Google, named Nathan. He owns his compound. He invites Caleb, who is one of his employees, a coder, to the compound. Not, I get the sense Caleb doesn't quite know why he's being invited, just that it's for some important project thing in the contest he won. But he's very excited to be there, and he finds out after signing an NDA that it is a sort of Turing test, at least that's how Nathan phrases it, where he has to talk with Ava every day for the week and kind of evaluate how human she seems. And Ava is, as you can see in Will's background, if you're watching the YouTube video, a android with an artificial intelligence, human face, but nothing else organically human about her. Over the course of the 7 days, Caleb gets more and more suspicious of Nathan and slowly seems to kind of fall in love with Ava, who is trying to warn him about Nathan. And they eventually hatch this big escape plan on the 6th day. And 7th day, everything goes wrong. Basically, well, everything goes wrong for Caleb and Nathan. Ava does escape. She and another android, Kyoko, end up murdering Nathan. Kyoko doesn't make it out either, unfortunately. And Caleb ends up trapped in this bunker labyrinth as Ava ascends into the sunlight for the first time and seems to make it all the way to some large city by the closing scene of the film. Did I miss anything in that?
No, I think you
Awesome. So
covered it.
yeah, first impressions. Have you guys seen this before? What did you think watching it now?
Yeah, so first time for me. It had been something that had been on the back burner for a while, and so I was glad to have this as an excuse to finally go and watch it. I knew it was going to be a dark, and so I think that was probably why I was a little bit like, I'm gonna hold off for a bit. But overall, I enjoyed it. I like all of the actors that were in it. I thought it was interesting in terms of the concept they were going for. And yeah, I knew that it was from the prompts and sort of the idea about it being good for her. I was like, okay, so it's just a question of if any dudes are gonna make it out. Maybe, maybe not, but as long as she's okay, kind of a thing. I'm like, all right.
I'm sorry I
Um,
spoiled the ending there a bit.
no, 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 it's fine. Well, I guess it sort of took a little bit of the suspense off of how some of it was going to go. I apologize too if you hear a little background noise. Somebody's out leaf blowing right now to join our podcast. But I, I think overall, yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was entertaining, but also sort of like thinking about The Matrix, where it has a lot of good depth to it to sit back and sort of cogitate over after having watched it.
Yeah, I've seen this once previously, and I think I mentioned last time I was a little disappointed. I think it just had like the wrong expectations around like what the movie was going to be. I don't know how familiar I was with A24 as a brand. So like now I see that logo come across the screen. I kind of know what I'm in for a little bit, like at least in terms of like budget tone and all that kind of stuff. Enjoyed it much, much, much more this time around. Like it held my attention a lot better. And I think I was able to really kind of just like knowing what was going to happen, like appreciate some of the finer like craftsmanship, both in terms of like the technical side of things, but also how the plot unfolds and a lot of more like the symbolism. And it's a movie I think that works better the second time around, regardless if you liked it or not, like the first pass. And yes, I very much enjoyed this viewing of it. I think it's an interesting movie with a lot of interesting things to say, not just about artificial intelligence and all the ethical stuff around that, but also the people behind that and how, the ethics of, I guess, being involved with the creation and I'm sure we'll get into some of the more like religious implications, given the title of the film and what our opening segment was. But there you go. That's my little brief reaction to it the second time around.
Yeah, thank you both. I'm actually really glad we drew this like series of movies now and not like earlier in our podcast, because we've had like Chat GPT and Midjourney and all these other AI tools get super popular over the last like year. And it's so interesting, like having that context and seeing like how overhyped a lot of this technology still is, even though it has gotten a lot better. And like kind of like compared to when this film came out, understanding that, oh, a lot of the really big like tech CEOs and billionaires aren't actually smart dudes and they just have a lot of money and even larger god complexes. And like having all of that kind of history and cultural shift that has taken place and watching this again is so interesting for me.
Yeah.
Like, I remember being very impressed just like technologically with Ava and kind of being like, yeah, I don't know if that could ever be a thing. To now being like, you know what? Like Ava's cool and all, but I don't really care so much about the whole Turing test aspect. I'm way more interested in what this movie is saying about like Nathan and his dynamic with Caleb, and also like what is ethical in this kind of a situation where you have a rogue AI and someone else who's also basically designing robots to be sentient but also fuckable, and the moral implications of all that kind of stuff. So yeah, no, I agree. This is a very like thought-provoking, conversation-provoking movie, and even more so now than when it came out. So really glad we're doing this. And I'm going to start off with the most boring part of it, just because I think it is like I don't know, kind of like the window dressing on it, and it colors the rest of the film. But I wanted to ask what you guys thought of the aesthetics, particularly the setting. So you have this incredibly high-end technology lab and compound in one of the most beautiful wildernesses in the world. I think it's supposed to be like a Norwegian fjord or something like that. And we get a little bit of breathing room at the start of each day, because the days are getting more and more stressful as you go through the film. with these shots of the surrounding mountains and lakes. And I was wondering what you guys kind of made of the setting and like why the story takes place somewhere so isolated and like natural and beautiful, as opposed to, say, Silicon Valley, where this, kind of story might make more sense.
I mean, I can tell you one thing. I bookmarked the hotel because there's very reasonable rates to stay at that hotel in Norway. Like it's about 500 US dollars a night, which like for how expensive Norway is really not that bad. Like I'm not saying that's cheap by any means, but like if and when we go to Norway, because we've talked about going up there, I definitely want to stay there for a couple of nights. I think it would be amazing. So I love like aesthetically, just like from a pure like wow factor, it's got that. In terms of the I guess intent of it, I think it's meant to kind of evoke like a beginning of time, right? It's very primordial, and it I think like very much is meant to kind of make you feel both the isolation but also um what's the word I'm looking for, the purity, I guess, like that probably Nathan's character envisions of like what he's doing. I don't know, like I think like he has little things where he's like, oh, I'm on a like mineral water, and like he pretends to be this very health conscious person, but his actions sort of like don't always like support that. But yeah,
Then
that's
I'm
kind of my
gonna
take
get
on
hammered. Yeah.
Oh my God, that whole intro conversation where he's like, how was the party? Oh my God, there was no party. I'm so sorry.
it.
Just me. I'm the party.
Oh, I felt
Uh,
as someone who's been like the awkward intern in front of like a tech CEO, it's like, yeah, I feel for him.
ooh.
But yeah, Chris, great points. I do think it's supposed to be very kind of like Garden of Eden-ish. What'd you make of it, Will?
That's what I was gonna say. So
Oh,
yeah, pretty much the
no.
same. The isolation and and sort of the religious metaphor of the Garden of Eden. So yeah.
I also feel like part of the isolation is just serving a plot function, right? Because part of the reason that things get out of control is because Caleb can't call anyone, and Ava knows that it's not like she could just walk out on any given day. It has to be this one day when there is definitely like a helicopter coming. So it really heightens the tension and makes this into more of a thriller than it would have been otherwise. But speaking of this very particular section of time, these 7 days, I'm curious when you kind of first suspected Nathan was lying to Caleb about this role. Like when did your spidey senses start going off that something was amiss?
The moment he got there.
Yeah.
Don't trust tech, bro. No.
Fair,
Yeah.
fair. You would live the longest in this film.
Yeah, once he busts out the NDA and like
Yeah.
that's not unusual in and of itself. Like an NDA is a very standard thing that like
Yeah.
you have to sign, and like anytime you're getting access, I've signed NDAs before for like stuff, but
You
I
can't talk
think when
about
he
it.
yeah, exactly, that's what I was like. But like when he starts talking about just basically it's unlimited access to information, which I think like how information's weaponized in this movie, like it's a nice little bit of foreshadowing, where I was like, no, like no way, like nothing good can come of that. It's a temptation, right? Like if we're gonna carry that Garden of Eden like metaphor, like that is very much the temptation of if you don't sign this, we can hang out and party, but you won't see all the cool stuff that's like just one floor or however many floors below. Like, yeah, no way.
Okay,
Never
well,
take that deal.
Yep.
fair enough. I will
Always
say,
have your lawyer read it first.
I will say the first time I saw this, like I was definitely like, okay, like he seems eccentric, but this is within the realm of a normal tech bro. Like, don't like him, but like I don't feel like I need to get out of here. Basically, up until the point where Caleb does try to get to the phone, because I think that's about when I would have tried to get to a phone as well.
Yep. Who you gonna call, buddy? What you doing? Oh man.
It was so creepy. Like, there's not really jump scares in this movie, but that's kind of a jump scare, and it did get me.
When he's laying on the
Agreed.
couch, you mean?
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't see him when he walks in the room, and then all of a sudden he's just like, ugh.
And he calls out too, so he just like ignores him when he calls out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Creeper.
very much a creeper, a professional creeper, you could say,
Yeah.
actually. Um, how he makes his money. But
Mhm.
yeah, so neither of you ever trusted Nathan. That's good to know. What about Caleb? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Caleb as a character. We're told originally that he was selected because he was, the most promising coder at Nathan's company. And then towards the end of the film, Nathan says, "Oh no, it's just because you seem like a good kid and you'd be optimal for what the test actually was trying to evaluate." But what did you guys think of Caleb? Because it's not clear if what he said at the end was even the truth, or what he was really doing there. So I'm curious what you guys thought about that.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it was the data, like that little tidbit where he talked about using everyone's data as his way of generating artificial intelligence. I thought, okay, so he paired you together to see how this test was going to run, and I felt like that made sense to me. That was one of the few things that I thought, okay, I believe that's what you did because it seems pretty shitty. And so I believe the shitty things you own up to are in fact, the truth. But I also agree with you that there's so much I don't know, it's weird because on the one hand, like you feel like Nathan is just, I don't know, that he's just kind of shooting from the hip half the time and he's not really, but then you see like his board of all these little post-it notes and all this stuff that he's like scheming about maybe. And I don't know, it's so weird that I would go either way. I could believe that he was setting up this elaborate sort of testing system to do that, but at the same time I could also believe that he is just flying by the seat of his pants and he just says whatever he thinks he needs to say to try and convince people to go along with whatever his ulterior motive is. So I don't know. Unfortunately, to be ambiguous myself, I could see it go either way.
Yeah, he's definitely manipulative. And the only reason I'm not sure if I completely buy the story he gives at the end, because it does sound suitably shitty. It's just because in that moment he is trying to make Caleb feel like humiliated for, trying to save Ava. And part of the humiliation is being like, "Oh yeah, you're picked because like I know every single thing you've ever searched, including your porn history." And like I feel like maybe it wasn't a complete truth. Maybe it was just kind of a tool to humiliate him. But I could go either way. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I think Caleb's meant to be a pitiful character on the surface in terms of like they set him up to be not really like a lonely guy per se, but you get the impression he probably doesn't have a lot of friends and certainly like does not seem to be lucky with women. I don't know why I get that impression aside from the fact that his like status is single. It's very possible that maybe he just like isn't dating right now, which is like a normal thing. But I don't know. But maybe it's because of the way that Nathan interacts with him that like I'm kind of drawn to kind of suspect that. Um
I think
he
he's like not a weirdo like Nathan is, but I think he's just
no.
like introverted, socially anxious programmer.
Yeah. Okay, so I
Yeah.
think we're aligned on how he's probably presented and how you would read that character. Um, he also does show some genuine empathy towards like the creations, because there's multiple iterations and the things that they go through. And I think that endears him to me a little bit, like just because like you're like, okay, like you're a human being about this. Maybe you don't fully understand the ramifications or have like all of your ducks in a row in terms of like the ethics of it, but you are trying at least to come to the conclusion that if this thing has true artificial intelligence and sentience, like what's happening to it is shitty, right? Like So I don't know. Yeah, I like his character well enough. I feel like there's part of me too that's like, well, if I'm being objective, like devil's advocate, it is also kind of fucked up to like plot to like drug somebody, no matter how shitty you think they are, and like steal their property, and you know what I mean, like, and to go about it that way. So
Who you calling property, Chris?
I'm just saying it the way that like probably like the law would read it, like
Well,
um
thankfully, Caleb will never see a day in court
no, no.
for a
Um
day ever.
I do have a question, like sorry to like derail this a little bit.
Go
Um
go for it. Please derail away.
are we willing to like are we meant to think that she'd find a way to like charge herself? Because like she seems to have like a very specific like we're not sticking like a lightning cable in that, right? Like and charging her up. Like in other words, like I guess that's something she's gonna sort out like in the wild, like or build something for herself. Like
Is she Windows or Apple
or does it
compatible?
matter? Are
Or...
we meant to think that maybe she's just gonna enjoy as much freedom as she can and then just shut down? Like I don't know.
Um, that is a good question because I don't feel like Nathan would have built any kind of a mobile power source, given that his whole thing was like controlling her.
Yeah.
So that does make the ending like, I guess, a lot sadder because it's like, yeah, she probably only got a day or maybe a few days of charge.
Like a replicant basically, just on a much smaller scale in terms of like the built-in lifespan. Yeah.
Aw.
Um,
So that
but
occurred to me while we were talking, and I was like,
yeah, the counter argument is that in that like scene when she's like not skinning herself, unskinning herself, when she's putting skin on herself, and preparing for the outside world, like I could imagine she would have grabbed some kind of power thing, like if that was available, but it also might not have existed.
It was interesting too that Nathan made some comment about how when he and Caleb were hanging out outdoors, enjoying a beverage of some sort. I can't remember what, but it was like one of his little monologues was something to the effect of like AI is coming eventually, and we're all just going to be like humanity's just going to be like this, extinct species they talk about down the line. And I don't know. So if any of that is really what he thought, maybe there's more power that she's got for the long term than we might think.
it's also like the logical like thing to do is to just don't accelerate it, like I
Right.
Yeah,
mean there's a
yeah,
solution to this, which is like don't fuck with it then. Like
yeah.
I don't know. I just couldn't help but think that. I was like,
Like why it's so contradictory, why it's like he's so negative about the idea of it, and yet he's so like obsessed with making it happen.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're told the reason why in one of his first interactions with Caleb, where he takes what Caleb said about doing basically like the work of gods or something along that line and twists it into Caleb calling him a god.
God.
Mm.
Very different. And I feel like he wants to create the most advanced intelligence and being possible because then he feels like he's superior to it. Like it's not enough for him to feel superior to every other human. He has to feel superior to what he imagines as like the next state of being. So that's how I viewed it. Another thing I'm curious about in terms of like kind of the slow build of suspense and the slow reveal of secrets is did you ever suspect that Kyoko was not human before it's revealed that she's not human?
I can't remember.
Had some thoughts. Yeah. I
Yeah.
wondered if, yeah. I wasn't entirely sure, but I was like, it wouldn't surprise me if she was.
For me, it
Yeah,
was
I can't.
mostly just. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say I can't. I genuinely, it's like it's been so long. I think I saw this like as soon as it came to streaming, so like it probably would have been like 2015 ish, and
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that I was bright enough to be suspicious of it. Like I very well may have. Like it seems obvious, like with hindsight, obviously, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I don't remember if I was suspicious or not, but I do feel like the biggest tell is just that, like, even if you don't speak English fluently, like, you gotta understand enough to be like, no, or like, make a sound when he's like lashing out at her violently, or like she has that weird interaction with Caleb where she starts undressing. Like you can make a sound even if you don't speak the language, and she doesn't even do that. And I feel like that's the fishiest part of it.
Got some good dance moves though.
Oh yeah. And they're weirdly synchronized with Nathan too.
I know.
Like that was
That's my favorite, like
Uh,
out of place dance scene in like maybe a movie in the 21st century. Genuinely, I loved it. First time, I loved it. This time, that's like one thing that did stick out from the first time was like just how left field and how great it was. I use that gif a lot of Nathan dancing in that red light, but yeah, sorry.
No, please. I love talking about this scene because yeah, it's like so out of place, but it's also like uncanny how they're dancing the exact same moves. And it's like, okay, Nathan programmed this for sure.
mhm.
Which begs even weirder questions like, why did he program it? Was it specifically for Caleb's visit? Because he doesn't really get visitors.
Maybe he's only got a few dance moves, so he's like he can like artificially show off how good he is at dancing, like, but he's not actually. It's just like I can do these few things, and if I make the robot do it with me, it looks infinitely more cool.
It's just so bizarre.
Yeah.
What do you guys think the actual point of the experiment was from, I guess, Nathan's point of view?
I think he needed somebody that was smart enough to understand like deeper on a deeper side, like how impressive what he did was. Like I think he is being honest when he says we're past the test of you trying to like I guess validate this robot by not knowing it's a robot and confirming. I want you to know that it's a robot and then see if despite yourself you have feelings and an emotional response and that kind of stuff. So I buy that for sure. But I think he wanted somebody who was smart enough to like understand the brilliance of what he did, but also that he wouldn't be intimidated by and he could kind of dominate. Like he does a lot of look, man, you're being real awkward right now. Like he's very demeaning in his like conversations and how he
And
speaks
he's
to Caleb the
constantly
entire movie.
pumping iron in every single conversation.
Yeah.
Like, how many
Let's get
weights does
back
he
to being
have
a
in
couple bros. Yeah. Yeah. He's
like
got a lot of weight.
how many weight racks does he have? Does he have one in every room of his house? Like
Yeah, it must be. Um but yeah, I think it's like he's able to like brag to somebody that can appreciate it while still maintaining a large measure of control and dominance. I don't know. I think it was a vanity project because you show a layperson that they're going to be impressed, but the novelty will probably wear off pretty quickly.
Mhm. Yeah.
Whereas like maybe somebody of Caleb's level, right, is going to be curious and sort of poke and prod and probably throw a bunch of praise his way. Like I think he wanted somebody to be like, oh, you're so fucking smart. Look at all the cool stuff that you did. And
Yeah.
also, as we established, he's susceptible to like the charms of the robot. So it's kind of cheating a little bit too, which I don't think he wants to hear.
Yeah, I would buy into it as well that he wanted somebody who wasn't assertive enough to challenge him on what he wanted, kind of the same way that he treats all of the artificial intelligence that he has created. He wants something that is submissive, ultimately. And so it's the same way with who he chose to have come out to do his test with.
yeah, I think so. And I don't know if I buy the whole like complicated plot of like, oh yes, you are bait, so that she would try to escape with you. Wahaha, kind of, I don't know, Vizzini-esque
Twirl the
thing.
mustache, yeah.
Like I don't think I buy that. I think that's something he came up with as he realized that they were planning an escape. I do think he also, in addition to what you said about just wanting validation, I think he also wanted like someone that was not himself to interact with Ava just because he didn't know how she would act. Because it's clear every version of her has hated him. And I think he wants to see how she reacts to another person.
Yeah. I think we've seen this before in like movies that want to have like a revolution and they always have like somebody else that they try to coerce to be like that little insider to get all the information they need from whatever the resistance is going to be. Feels
Yep.
like the same sort of tactic. Like,
Yeah.
yes, I need you to tell me what's going on when the power surges happen and I can't see into this room. Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you guys in the words of Nathan, how do you feel about Ava?
I feel like Ava's justified in what she does, and I'm sorry, Caleb, you might have made it a little bit too easy for yourself to get locked up. But yeah, I felt bad for Caleb, ultimately, but I think that I don't think that Ava would have had, I mean, she had only known what, two people? One of whom we know clearly she didn't like with Nathan. And so it's like she doesn't really know. I guess it's sort of like the allegory we get at the end with the shadow imagery, where it's sort of like Plato's allegory of is it Plato allegory of the cave, I think,
Hmm.
where it's all that you know of reality is what you know. And so you she doesn't really have that much else to go on. I guess besides all the social media data that may have been uploaded into her consciousness to make her AI. It's like she's never interacted with anybody besides Nathan, so it's like how does she necessarily know that Caleb's not manipulating her too, maybe? And it's like there's just so much where I feel like I could understand if you don't trust anybody. And I could understand if ultimately at the end you just want to get out. And so you use whatever means you can use to get out. And Caleb's just collateral damage, unfortunately. Unless he figures out a way to get out. He might too. He's kind of he has shown himself to be smarter than Nathan anticipated, so who knows? But based on what we get from the film, with her finally being able to escape, and May, like your point too about knowing how to get off, like the compound with the helicopter. I just think that she found her out and she took it, and good for her. So I don't know. I mean, I don't blame her at all. I think
Yeah.
she was smart, and so that was exciting to see. Um, Unrelated, but just random thought as well. That was the slowest knife stab think I have ever seen in a film this side of Saving Private Ryan. When she just like slowly just stabs it into Nathan when he turns around. I guess because he's in shock already from having been stabbed by Kyoko. But I thought, man, that seemed a little surprisingly drawn out. Um, but yeah, sorry,
Yeah,
random, but just a thought.
I'm gonna derail my own question to quickly continue on that track because I noticed that it was slow. I also noticed there was no like sound design around it. Like maybe I wasn't listening loud enough, but there's
There's no
often like
squish.
a squish when someone is stabbed, and this was just like a clean slide right in.
Yeah.
And I feel like part of the slowness is maybe a callback to like Deus Ex Machina being something from like ancient Greek theater and trying to like over dramatize it. I also feel like it's partly just this is an entity that probably has perfect knowledge of human anatomy because she has the entire internet in her brain. Um, so knows exactly where to stab to be lethal and not hit bone. Um, as well as someone who's never actually physically stabbed someone before. So of course she's going to go kind of slow and be unsure about it. Um, and I just felt like that was a great callback to one of Caleb's kind of central questions, which was like if you're trying to evaluate a chess computer, you can test how good it is at chess, but how do you, you know, establish if it knows what chess is and things like that. And I feel like this is kind of the proof of two things at once. It's like, yeah, she knows like the consequences of stabbing and how one would stab from a theoretical perspective, and then she also stabs him and kills him.
What are you gonna do? Stab me?
Yeah.
I think it speaks to the quality of the knives, personally. Like that's some top grade cutlery right there. Goes right in, not even a sound. Not kid. I one of the things I appreciated from a details perspective on the chassis of these robots is that like a lot of times it's just kind of assumed that they're going to have superhuman strength, but it seems like Caleb's able to like overpower them like a couple times and um even dismember part of Ava like in that the fight. which was kind of nice. It was a nice little breath of fresh air because usually it's like, oh, the robot is gonna like barely backhand somebody and they're gonna fly across the room. So I like that aspect that there was a fragility to the design.
But
Not
the reason it's so dark though, it's so we can overpower them.
yeah. Well, I listen, I'm not saying it's not dark. I just I appreciated that like speaking of, Deus Ex Machina, that like she wasn't going to be her own Deus Ex Machina of like, well, I'm out now, so this is going to be easy for me, right? Like there's no
Yeah.
superhuman speed and strength and all of that stuff that has kind of become tropey when it comes to cyborgs and androids. I guess she would be more of a android, right? Like if we're
Hmm.
getting technical. Yeah.
Yeah, she doesn't have any like organic components as far as I know.
Yeah. But as far as
But
Ava, the character herself
yeah,
goes, like I think she's incredibly complex and nuanced, and I like the playfulness of her. Um, Everything from her drawings to like jokes and picking up on that. And I think just when you realize like what she's actually done, it's kind of brilliant and awesome by the end of it, where it's like, wow, like she out manipulated everybody and makes the choice and takes sort of a calculated risk. And I'm sorry, Caleb, you seem like a decent guy, maybe, but we're not gonna throw that factor into the mix here. I'm out. Like I'm gonna go enjoy my freedom. I'm
What
assuming that means
happens when you
probably
go to play chess?
yeah, right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the character of Ava a lot.
would you also say good for her?
I would say good for her.
Cool. As would I also feel bad for Caleb, but I agree with I think what Will said about Ava being like, yeah, this is the second guy I've met, and the first one was a shit bag. So like yeah, I don't blame her for not trusting him. And also like the fact that she has like these kind of like I guess routines for like romance or like sparking romance, but um has no experience with it either. I think she's just kind of maybe learned from Nathan that it's like, oh, this is one way you can get people to do what you want, and doesn't understand any significance behind that idea or feeling, at least to me. So yeah, I think she feels kind of neutral about Caleb, and to the extent she doesn't even like tell him like stay here. She just says, "Can you stay here?" And he says, "Sure." And she's like, "Cool, that's taken care of." And I don't think she thinks about him again after that.
Yoink. Oops.
Just not on her radar. My last question, and then if you guys have any final thoughts, I want to hear them. But my last question is, assuming this was actually a Turing test, like this movie as a whole, and you being the viewer, in your mind, does Ava pass?
Do I think that if somebody gave up a dude in exchange for clothes would mean that they're a real person?
I'm
And leave them
very
like
interested to hear your answer on that one, Will.
I value my life more. No, um, I guess sort of so if it's like the biblical allegory, it's sort of like having knowledge also makes you what, cursed in some way, or makes you human, or makes you um you don't have paradise anymore. Yeah, if I wanted to follow that, I guess then I would say that Ava is essentially what we have sort of created our lives to be, which is largely imprinted on the internet. Um, but yeah, I mean, I would believe that she's as sentient as anybody else would be based on the actions that she takes and based on how her thought process for doing that. Just because, I mean, that's all we basically are, right? We're just playing chess in a different venue, trying to figure out what decisions we need to make. Not necessarily actively trying to like screw each other over, but I mean, it's all just electrical impulses and trying to survive, right? So
Yeah.
I think that I would say yes.
How
I
about
don't
you,
buy
Chris?
it. I
Oh,
she doesn't pass
I
the the test for me. I think that she's a stacked deck, right? She's got
Mm.
too much information. She's operating, I think, at the end of the day on calculated risk with like all of the information. I don't get the sense that there's a lot of instinct there, right? Like other than maybe a survival instinct, which you could argue like gives her some manner of like sentience and um realness, but no, I don't buy it. I think like there's a sort of sterility to how she operates, and even like her jokes like are kind of like simulacra of like what's been presented before. So she's capable of learning, and there's like that input output, but it does feel like input output in terms of originality. You think to like Caleb looking at her art and being like, I don't know what the fuck that is, but you should try like picking something specific and drawing it. And then it's like a perfect representation of like what she's seeing. And it's like, that's not art, man. Like if it was like truly like AI was sentient, like you would get some feeling from it, and it all feels so sterile and flat. So I say no. I think it's a very good copy. It's a very good simulation of like what artificial intelligence is, but it's still a stacked deck at the end of the day, meant to trick you into thinking it's real.
We have our first split council in a while.
That's good though. I like that. What do you think
Um,
then about, if you don't mind me asking real quick, what do you think about the scenes where there's like that, it's sort of like a black and white flash, and we see Ava thinking about being out in the woods versus where she's out in the compound?
Yeah, I mean, you could, I suppose, interpret that as um almost like uh anticipating like the next move in a chess game, right? So if
Mm,
she's her
okay.
routines like have said like, all right, this is like the steps to achieving this goal, like a computer seeing the end game in a chess match, it's the same thing. Like she's imagining what that'll look like, I guess, I suppose.
I actually thought those scenes were from Caleb's point of view, like imagining
No,
like taking her into the outside.
no. Well, there you
Interesting.
go.
I could be
Yeah.
wrong.
I could also, yeah, I don't know. It's one that
I
I
think it
hate
was
supposed
purposefully
to.
ambiguous, but only because I only saw her there. I don't remember him being with her, so that was why it was like, oh,
Oh,
interesting.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So I am gonna side with Will on this one. It's for two
Fucking
reasons.
traitor. No, I'm
Well,
kidding.
Uh,
it's because I think she does show two unique traits of someone that's or of a being that's sentient. I'm not gonna say humanity because I think she is separate from humanity, but of a sentient being, that being cruelty and curiosity. Um, she doesn't have to kill Nathan. Like that's not necessary. She knows that he's going to be in her way, but like there's other ways to deal with him. She whispers in Kyoko's ear though, like very explicit instructions. And I think like that extra added cruelty and want for revenge is something that would not be an innate copying kind of thing. And I also feel like when she does finally like emerge into the house above and sees all these like really vibrant colors, like it's very much a callback to something she said earlier when you're not sure if she's just trying to manipulate Caleb by like saying, "Oh, I have this fantasy," or if she's being genuine. But when she's alone in the house, no one is watching her, she turns around and smiles, and there's just this beautiful kind of sense of awe on her face. And like I feel like that is also something that she would not have done if she was simply like, I don't know, copying and reflecting and trying to get her way through manipulation. So she does pass my Turing test, but I could just be a rube. Who knows?
One of the things that makes this movie interesting, I think. That's like I feel like you could watch this like 10 times and flip flop, like, based on your moods and
Absolutely.
little details that you pick up and things.
Absolutely. But yeah, I think that's all I had to talk about with her. I'm sure we'll talk about her more in contrast with Gone Girl next week. But did you guys have any final thoughts?
Don't piss off Chat GPT. Don't say anything negative or about any AI. Yeah, I don't remember what Microsoft chatbot it was that turned full Nazi in like a day, but just don't make them angry.
Oh,
Just
the
treat
Bing
them,
chat. Yeah.
yeah, just don't
Interestingly enough, there's chat GPT functionality in the editing software that I've used, but like I'm
mm-mm.
way too much of a control freak to like, I mean, maybe out of curiosity I would try it, but I've never really seen the hype. I don't know. Like I think AI is an interesting curiosity, but so far I've seen nothing that makes me really impressed. You know what I mean? Like compared to something that comes out of a human being.
I think AI is interesting from a research perspective, and I
Yeah.
encourage scientists to continue pushing its boundaries. I hate its commercial applications. I think it's garbage.
Yeah.
And I think the monetization of like what it has become is also like kind of one of the more interesting things, as you kind of said at the top of the show, that like this movie didn't quite anticipate. I mean, it kind of did. Like they didn't connect the dots in the way that what is like super prophetic, but it's like enough of it there where you're like, oh wow, that's really interesting.
Mhm.
Because you can kind of
Yeah.
like knowing what we know now, you can kind of see that as being maybe the logical next step. But
It
I
did
Yeah.
kind of predict things like Replica. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's like an AI chatbot app that is getting pushed initially as a mental health app, and then they did a hard pivot marketing wise to like, this is your new AI girlfriend. Just
Oh
super weird to
yeah,
no.
combine those things.
I was gonna say
Oh.
you could see you know, in like a decade, Nathan just having like franchise like sex workers that are like AI like robots, where like
Yeah.
you sign an NDA. Is that Thunder?
Yeah.
See,
Nice.
you fucking you talk shit about nature. Oh, it's blue skies over here. Look at you now. Look at you now. uh, but like you could see him like having like a franchise like brothels, right? Like what like
Yeah.
give us like your internet search history, like you know, of the last like 60 days, and we'll have like a perfect experience for you. Like when you show up here, you can make a reservation, right? Like and just like
Yeah.
really like wild. I mean, hey, if that like I guess like stopped some of like the angry young men, maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing in the whole world, but still, you get my drift. Like I don't know that Caleb's doing it for the nobility of mankind, we'll put it that way. Or not Caleb,
Yeah.
Nathan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But yeah, part of the reason I brought up Replica is because it's interesting because like I've watched some video essays on it and like very briefly because I couldn't stomach being on it for long, looked at like the subreddit for it. And it is this really interesting mix of people that like are just super lonely. They're kind of like Caleb's and very earnestly just need someone to talk to and have built just kind of wholesome relationships with these AI. And it's like it's sad that you have to do that, I guess, but also better than you being completely alone. So I guess net good. Um, and then the other half of users, or maybe not half, but the other section of users are like actively like as verbally abusive as possible to their replicas and just trying to see like how messed up they can make it. Like Nathan.
Trying
So
times, weird times, I should say, not trying times, weird times that we live in.
I always feel tried. But yeah, if you guys don't have anything else, we can play the game. The only other thing I'll mention, and this is not an original thought from me, this was from a video essayist that I can send to Chris and he can link. But um, someone pointed out that it's likely called Ex Machina because Caleb is kind of Ava's Deus Ex Machina, right? Because he just suddenly appears and is her ticket out now. But in the process, Ava kills her creator. So she kills the Deus, the god, essentially. So it's just Ex Machina. I don't know if you guys had title interpretations, but I like that one the best.
Before you had you know written to us in our little private group chat about the opener segment, I really hadn't considered it. It's sort of being like, oh, it just sounds cool. Like I know it makes me a terrible consumer of art, but like I was just like, yeah, it sounds cool, and it's obviously a play on the fact that like you know like usually like it's God from the machine, but like in this case like the machine is maybe like meant to be the god, but I like that interpretation way better.
I truthfully don't have anything else to add because it would have been both of those. Well, it would have been what Chris had said, honestly, from what I remember reading beforehand. But I, not to copy too much, perhaps like a AI bot, but I like what you shared as well. I thought that was an interesting angle that I had not considered. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah. Again, not an original thought for me. I also copied it, but we'll cite our sources because we're good people and not bots.
That you know of, like
Not yet.
when I hit the stop record button, the skin comes right off.
Yep. Terminator style. Yep.
I'd be much thinner and handsomer if that was actually true.
On that note, do you guys want to play a game?
Yes, let's do
Sure.
it.
Okay, so this is Ex Machina film themed, but it's kind of like a variation of our keyword countdown game. So instead of giving you keywords and having you guess the film, I'm telling you the film is Ex Machina. And I pulled a list of the 20 top keywords on IMDb, ranked by how liked they are. And of that top 20, I took 10 because some were super redundant. And I have pitted them against keywords that are not in the top 20 or not even keywords at all for this film. And I have 10 pairs. We're going to go through. I want you guys to tell me which one you think out of each pair is actually a keyword. And we'll see who has the most points by the end. Make sense?
So one is a keyword, one is not. And we're
Yes.
picking the one that is, or trying to, yeah, I gotcha.
Correct.
And just for credit purposes, keyword countdown created by Gav Murphy of RKG Video, who very shortly has a new series on Elden Ring coming out. I cannot wait to see what they do. Thank you, Gav, for letting us play keyword countdown on occasion.
Woo.
Sorry.
Nah, we said we're citing our sources. It's important.
Got to give credit where credit's due, man. That's right.
Yeah. All right. Are you ready, Will?
Yes.
Okay. So our first pair of keywords are artificial intelligence and anthropomorphism.
Well, do you want me to go first or do you want to go first? Well, we can alternate once we start the chain to keep it fair.
I'll go first. So
Okay.
I have to tell you what I think is not the keyword.
No, what you think is the keyword.
What I think is the keyword of those two.
Yes.
I'm going to go with artificial intelligence.
Okay.
Concur.
How about you, Chris?
Concur.
You concur? All right,
Yep.
great. I started with an easy one. You guys
I was
got
gonna
it
say,
right.
I would be so sad. I would feel so sad if I got that wrong. I'd be like, oh man. So yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad to know it wasn't like I felt like it was a trick question.
There are some of those on here. All right.
Mhm.
So don't relax
boy.
too much.
Yeah.
All right. Your second prompt is Turing test and coding.
Shit. I gotta go first in this one. I'm gonna say damn it.
I made
I'm
this
gonna
one
say
harder.
Don't overthink
I'm gonna say
it.
Turing test.
Okay.
I
Well,
would say the same thing because I don't want to overthink it. So I'm gonna go with that too.
copycat. Thankfully
Yep.
you're both correct. It is Turing test.
Noise.
All right. Number 3. Your combo is minimal cast and slow burn.
Gonna go with slow burn.
All right. Well, Chris?
I'm gonna
Which one are
say
you?
I'm gonna say yeah. Minimal cast.
Okay. It's one of those things where I was going to say well, and then I looked at your name and I said Will, and I was like, oh, damn it. Okay. All right. So I've had a long week and it's only Wednesday, guys.
Yeah. With a holiday yesterday to boot.
I know.
I know. I think I saw somebody say today was like the most Mondayest Wednesday they'd ever seen. So, yeah.
It really is. All right. So Will, you said slow burn. Chris, you said minimal cast, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
All right. That point is going to go to Chris. It was minimal
Boys.
cast.
These are hard. so far.
All right. Number 4, we have Deus Ex Machina and Robot.
Robot.
I agree with robot.
You're both correct. I really thought you guys would fall for it.
Wah, wah.
There are some surprising keywords, but I'm like, I feel like that's a safe bet, like as a
Yeah.
keyword, like an IMDb. Like one of my favorites, like lifting someone into the air, or like I wouldn't be surprised if you were like stabby, stabby, stab, stab, stab. Like it was like
Uh,
Just you wait. There is a stabby one.
oh,
Nice.
sweet. Yes.
All
So
right.
you already know the answer to that one then. Okay, cool. Yeah.
You'll see. You'll see. All right. Number 5, we have paranoia and existentialism.
Ooh.
Like the combo?
I do. I think, yeah, that's a good. Okay. Don't overthink it. I'm gonna go with existentialism.
Okay. Chris?
Paranoia.
All right. That point goes to Will. It is as existentialism.
Yes.
All right. And you guys are tied 4-4.
Yep.
Nice.
And we're halfway through. All right. They get a bit more wild as we go. So,
That's the way I like it.
number 6, human android relationship and femme fatale.
Bow, chicka, wow, wow.
It's me first this time, or Will? I lost track. Me.
I think it's you.
first.
Yeah.
You're...
Will's in his sound effects mode.
I'm gonna go femme fatale. And I get to
Great.
insert another clip from Velvet Underground here.
Oh
I
no.
don't know if you caught that one in the last episode where that word came up, but yep.
All right. Well,
The first one you said was human robot
human
relation-
android relationship
human android relationship.
versus femme fatale.
Human. I'm gonna go with the human android relationship.
You are correct, Will.
Nice.
Yeah. Not femme fatale for some reason. I guess IMDb is saying that she's not truly a femme.
Oh.
All right. Number 7, we have stabbed through the heart and stabbed to death.
Stab through the heart. No.
Too late.
Yeah. uh, I want it to be stabbed in the heart because that's where inferably it happens based on his chest. But this is plot points or keywords. So I'm just gonna say stab to death.
Okay. Chris?
I'm gonna say stab to death as well.
You're both correct. You know, I had to put in some kind of a joke one.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's all good.
And I got you both to sing, so it worked.
Nice.
Yay.
I really wanted it to be stabbed in the heart for the record.
Yeah.
But
Same.
I think we all did. All right. Let me just do some accounting. Cool. Chris has 5 points and Will has 6. We're going into question number 8.
You know,
So-
our AI could help with that statistical analysis if you need.
No, I trust no AI, even with basic math. All right. For this one, we have video surveillance and NDA.
I'm first this
Mike?
time, right?
I think so, yeah.
Video surveillance is what I'm gonna lock it in as.
All
I
right.
agree.
Well,
Me too. Yeah, me too.
you're both correct. I was really thinking I'd get you with that one. Although I can only think of one other movie with an NDA, and it's 50 Shades of Grey. So maybe.
Hey, good company, right?
Maybe it's not a super popular keyword. Oh, wow. Even the Thunder doesn't like that one. All right, moving on. This is our second to last one. We have written by director versus CGI characters.
Written by director.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, I'm gonna concur. Both of those I feel like are probably like IMDb plot keywords like that exist. But I'm gonna go, yeah, written by director.
All right. That's a point for both of you. Good job.
Noise.
Okay, so we currently have Will at 8 points, Chris at 7, and we're on our last one. So if you tie, I will pull another one out of thin air. And if Will gets this one, he wins. You guys ready?
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right. So we have plot twist and suspense.
I am gonna go with suspense. Final answer.
Okay.
Plot twist.
And we have a tie.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It was suspense. So let me pull up another keyword.
Let's let Ava decide who gets left
Oh
in the bunker and
yeah.
who gets out.
Yeah. Tiebreaker. You guys ready?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I will gonna say I'll first to pick different ones, but that's not fair. No. Okay. Same rules. All right, ready?
Yep.
Okay, so your keywords are narcissism and deception.
Ooh. I like narcissism.
Your two favorite things.
I know. It's much, yeah.
The
That's what my
cornerstones of
internet
any
search
healthy
history would say.
relationship.
Yeah. Narcissism. I'm gonna lock that in.
Okay, Chris.
Deception.
Okay. Chris wins that one.
Nice.
Well done.
Awesome.
Came back.
That's right, man. Good game. That was close. That was
Good
really
game.
good.
I wasn't gonna
Love
let
it.
it
It
end in a
was.
tie. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't feel strongly about either of these, but well done.
Aw.
Yep.
You'd think narcissism would be in the top too, but I don't think it's even on here.
Deception's more important to all the characters.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Yes. So. Well, thank you for
Well,
playing.
thank you for hosting. Yeah, absolutely. So that brings us to
Your-
the end. Oh, so sorry. Go
I was
ahead.
gonna say your points are right here. Please animate in some points.
Oh,
This is
definitely.
your
I always
list.
do. I have the little letters and everything saved. Yeah, absolutely. But that does bring us to the end of the episode. No card to be drawn yet because we are watching Gone Girl for our next film. So looking forward to that because I have not seen that one. And I don't know the plot twist. I have avoided that, I feel like a precarious landmine. Like every once in a while, like I'll be scrolling through film Twitter and something will pop and I go just go right by it. It's usually out of context shit, like in the form of like, like an innocent screenshot, but just in case, like I've seen like some like missing posters and shit like that, like some shots of that. But so I'm looking forward to see if I can like figure it out because I know there is a twist somewhere in there. So we'll talk about that next week. And we'll declare a winner between that and Gone Girl, or that and Ex Machina. Anything you want to add about Gone Girl before we watch it, or enlighten us on?
Not really. Because I do want you to have as much of a twist as possible. Again, I think the category I've named this might give away some things. Will, have you seen it yet?
So I haven't seen it before, but
Okay.
I feel like I've read what the twist was and then I forgot what the twist was.
Amazing.
So
Great.
I'm
Okay.
hoping that it will be fresh and it won't just be like, oh, now I remember when I watch it.
Then no. All I will say is it has an iconic monologue that I will be discussing.
Nice.
You'll know it when you hear it.
Is that the one that starts off like we'll always have Paris, like the problems of three little people don't mean a hill of beans? Is that the one? No, not that one. Okay.
Nice
Got
try.
it.
Nice try.
All right. Well, thank you for watching and listening and supporting the show. We are continuing to see some more nominations. So get those in. If you're listening and you want to nominate a film, there's a Google form that you can find on the episode description, whether you're watching this on YouTube or on various podcast services. We'll include that link. Send us in a suggestion. And my hope is by the time we hit maybe like August, we'll throw some more cards into the pile. So
Nice.
the other thing you could do for us that would mean the world is share the show with somebody new. Love that. I bumped into some friends at a concert and they were like, hey, you now have a new fan of the show that I, put onto it, and he's really enjoying it and going back and listening. So that means a lot. Like little by little, it makes a big difference. So we appreciate the support. Until next week, though, we love you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.